All right.
Awesome, great. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and get started. It's great to see everybody's blank screen with a mute up on there. And so that makes me feel less self-conscious, talking to all you people out there. No, it's great to be here. And of course, this is always an honor, always, a great event, the OPI Indian for All Conference. And I'm so thankful for all of you taking time out of your day on a beautiful Saturday to hang out with me for an hour. And I've got some fun stuff I think you'll enjoy. We'll enjoy talking about the resiliency of Native people, how we can celebrate that in our classrooms, how we can honor that in our schools, and maybe a few things we can learn from it to incorporate and continue to improve our teaching best practices. So I want to thank Jennifer Statham for inviting me to speak here, and my great, lovely assistant here, Sage Golisano, who I just met about 20 minutes ago. But she has been very supportive and helpful all along with emails. So just a great team at OPI, and thankful to be included in their circle. So last summer and this past year, of course, was unprecedented in the education field and in so many other realms of life, dealing with the pandemic and having to, distance and not being able to attend school last spring, and for many of us this fall. And so we had a lot of things that we had to deal with. And I think that it feels like we're coming out of it, at least here in America now. We're starting to turn the corner. And so that's a great feeling. And I just wanted to reflect back on this past year, because I was involved with a lot of different projects that really tried to emphasize Native resiliency. And I think that that's a theme that all of us can really appreciate, of course, after this past year in a whole new context. And so OPI approached me and they asked me to design a few lessons for them for last summer. And these lessons were kind of a basic content resources for students at home and for teachers to kind of promote for their classrooms. And so I thought I'd share some of those with you today. I also have some slides that I put together, and I can go through those as well. Just I'll find a way to take up this hour. I think I'll leave it open for questions here. What does it say, like the last maybe 10, 15 minutes?
Yep, that should be good.
Great. And is it the policy, Sage, for everyone to stay muted and with their cameras off?
Yes, that is the policy for this conference, and I can answer questions, or I can say the questions out loud if anybody types them in the chat.
Gotcha. Okay, I just want to take a quick look at this chat box here then. Oh, we got some great people here, some friends that I know. Thank you for being here. Okay, oops. All right. Get started here. I'm going to take us to the page where you'll be able to find the resources that I was referring to. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here. Okay, here's the IEFA page, and click on this Indian Ed for All link. And then in the featured resources here down towards the bottom, you'll see there's a lot of different links here, but this is the one that I wanted to review a little bit with all of you. And there's some really beautiful ideas I thought that came about this past year. And I also will update you on some materials that I'm developing now, currently, involved with the great project focusing on Native American military veterans throughout the state of Montana. And so just again, wanted to show some of the things that I've created myself here over this past year. So this past summer, I worked with Mike Jetty, and him and I put together this lesson called Islands, Ancient Islands in the Sky, Archaeology in the Beartooth Ice. And so Mike Jetty likes to refer to this lesson as the IPA. And, you know, it just has a ring to it, IPA. And I think that at first I was like, what is he talking about, IPA? And it's the Ice Patch Archaeology. That's what IPA stands for. There's also other things, of course, that IPA refers to that many of us are fans of. But this particular lesson looks at the archaeology that I've been doing. I've been involved with on a team of researchers over the past, I'd say it's been about 7 years now since we've been looking at these ice patches. And we were just up there this past year. We like to go right at the end of the summer, right before things start to get cold again, and most of the ice has retreated. And so there's a video link here that you can watch and share with your students. And it's about an 8-minute video. I don't think I'm going to show it right now, but it shows, you know, the researchers up there on the Beartooth Plateau looking at ice patches. The ice patches are around 10,000 feet, most of them, and higher. There are dozens of ancient ice patches up there. They're not all the same age. Some are older. The one that I went to 2 years ago was 10,000 years old, and the one that I went to this past summer was measured to be closer to 8,000 years old. And just fascinating. This past summer when I was up there, you know, just going up there, you have so many different revelations that occur to you just being on in the specific area, that had a researcher not gone to these areas, there are certain things that they wouldn't have been able to discover. And just a short story with you, but it's a good one. So this summer when we went up to look at the ice and take some ice core samples, some researchers got there ahead of time, early in the morning, before the rest of the crew arrived, to set the equipment up. And when they got there, just right before daybreak, they discovered there was a group of elk hunters there. And the elk hunters had hiked over. They were getting ready to harvest some elk. It was elk season. And they were not happy to see the ice core folks show up because obviously they were disturbing the game and you know, getting in the way of their hunting. And so the researchers, of course, had no idea what they were disturbing. And when they asked the hunters why they chose this ice patch to hunt at, the hunters told them that they go to this ice patch every year, and that just like clockwork, the elk come to that ice patch and just stand there. And so apparently elk love ice patches. And, you know, we would have never known this had it not been for these elk hunters who enlightened us on the topic. And what was even more relevant was that one of the researchers was skeptical of the idea of looking for animal remnants in the ice patches because he didn't think that ancient hunters would hunt animals on ice. But in fact, it's a practice that still occurs today, you know, 12,000 years later. And who could have known that, or 10,000 years later at least. So again, just a short story from this summer, the type of story that only happens when you visit these places, to be on site, to discover what's actually happening. As far as why do the elk like the ice, why are they attracted to ice? You know, I think there's many different reasons. Obviously, it's cooler. There are no bugs there, so the elk are not being, you know, annoyed by flies and other bugs. They like to lay down and sleep on the ice. And so They're very easy to harvest there. And that is probably the reason why ancient hunters were up there hunting them, harvesting them on the ice. And in the video, you'll see that the oldest ever artifact taken from an ice patch outside of the Arctic region was found here in Montana in the Beartooth Mountains. And it was an atlatl dart used by almost, I would say, Clovis era hunters 10,000 years ago to take down large game. And so there were buffalo up there 10,000 years ago at 10,000 feet. There were, you know, everything you can imagine, elk, deer, I imagine woolly mammoth, although we've never found traces of mammoth up there yet. And so I think that's a great story because it shows the resilience of Native people, even back in those days. I don't think that up until the researchers began discovering and really focusing on the archaeology in these ice patches did anthropologists or archaeologists ever take seriously the idea that Native Americans would be really living on the Beartooth Plateau 10,000 years ago. It just seems, you know, to be absurd, the idea. Why would they do that? You know, why would they, and how would they travel up that high on foot? It just seemed to be, I guess, out of the realm of possibility. Now we know it was just a common everyday occurrence. And so that's a huge leap in knowledge right there. And I think, you know, introducing young children to that concept, getting them to understand the potential that they have within themselves and the, you know, the ancestors that the Native people have here and this continent and elsewhere around the world really achieved remarkable things. And all of us are capable of those things as well. I think it's a hopeful message, the message of resilience. And so, again, it's all here in the IPA. There's also some websites that you can visit, some links. And there's also the story of the Anzac child that fits nicely within the context of the ancient ice patch archaeology. You can connect those two studies pretty easily. We know that the Anzac study, the Anzac Site, where the boy was found buried back in 1968, is only about a 60-mile walk from the Beartooth, or at least the Absaraka Plateau, and even less in some areas. So we're pretty sure that well, we can assume pretty with great confidence that the Anzac child's relatives were on the Beartooth Plateau, as they were all around the region. And there's really it's hard to imagine a place where they were not. And so, and all of this knowledge here is stuff that I didn't have as a child growing up, but now with Indian Ed for All, we can share this with our young people. So here's some questions that the students can reflect on. Just some basic concepts here to help them really think more deeply about the topic. This is a lesson that can fit, I think, for junior high through high school, but younger kids could also appreciate it. And I think the age range that I had it for, I can't remember, I do think it was like junior high through high school. Okay, so now moving on from there. I did a story, you know, I really believe that Native American people have a strong emphasis on art in their culture, and that we really value beautiful things. We like to create beautiful things. We like to use our imagination and exercise our joy that comes with creation, creativity. And we see that all throughout Indian country. It's a historic thing that we've seen going from the very beginning. And so I thought, what a hopeful idea. Let's make a lesson on Native artists, because so many of these artists are just so inspiring. They're so skilled at what they do, and they just dedicate their lives to their craft. And so I wanted to honor them. I wanted to show students some of the great work that they're producing out there. And so I kind of, picked the most obvious suspects, I guess. There's a lot of Native artists out there, but some of these folks that I chose to highlight have really kind of reached a level of notoriety, reached a level of fame, I guess, and success that they're kind of national, and many of them international names. And so I'm very proud to be able to celebrate their achievements, and I think kids really enjoy learning about them. So, there's a lot in just this one lesson. I mean, there is a ton of content. You could just pick one artist, say Wendy Red Star, and you could fill up an entire class period or more than one with just her work alone. And so, and again, there's many others out there, and I encourage us as educators to bring their talents to the fore. I think it shows the resilience. I think it shows, the love, the joy that's in Indian country, and how we're still leading. We're in Indian country. We're still leading the way in so many different facets. And I think in art, it's pretty clear and obvious that we're doing that. So we go down here and you see the questions that the kids are asked to reflect upon. What artists did you most enjoy learning about? What are 2 or 3 things that you learned about contemporary American Indian cultures by reviewing and listening to the work of these artists? Of course, Native American people, with our oral tradition, we are very contemporaneous. We love to be in today's moment. We want to be included. We want to be part of what's going on. And I think that's part of what the oral tradition emphasizes. We are people who value life. We value culture, and we like being with each other. And I think the art practices here really show that these artists come from strong families that really have shown them the beauty and how to have faith in their traditions. And those are some of the messages I think that kids are going to take away when they are asked to reflect and review this content. Okay, I've done a lot of work with the Crazy Mountains over the past several years because, I'm here in Los Angeles, and there's not too many folks who are available outside of Bozeman, I guess. And so I ended up kind of being a representative in a lot of ways for my tribe and for a native voice in the Crazy Mountain Forest Management Plan. And I tried to work, of course, cooperatively with the Crow tribe, with the Historic Preservation Office throughout all that. And it's been a great success, I think. There's been a lot of people who have spoken up for the Crazy Mountains. The Crazy Mountains are under threat right now because I would say some of the very richest people in the world, and I just discovered this over the past couple of years, but not just the 1%ers, but we're talking the 0.1%ers, like the Crazy Mountains. And they have bought land there. They continue to buy land there. There's a huge land purchase in the works as we speak. The Yellowstone Club is attempting to buy the Marlboro Ranch, which is located just south of the Crazies and to the west. But on every side of the Crazy Mountains, there's billionaires, and they want to have more of the mountains. They want to build in the mountains. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could happen there. And what we want to do is protect them. And so this lesson uses a video that I helped to produce with my friends at the Montana Wilderness Association that celebrates the ceremonial tradition of the Crazy Mountains. And the ceremonial tradition of the Crazy Mountains is very much a Psalagat Crow tradition that we know of, that has been recorded throughout history and that is well known in the Crow culture. And so a lot of the film focuses on that. It's an 8-minute video. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to check it out. It's beautifully made. I can't take very much credit for it, the production at all, outside of helping to line up the interviewees and do some interviews myself. But the 8-minute video was mostly all produced by Eric Ian. And so he did a fantastic job. The kids will love it. I think they'll be moved by it. They'll see that the Crazy Mountains are very important, and not just for the Crow people, but and not just for Montana, but for the world. I mean, this is to me, should be regarded as a World Heritage Site for so many different reasons. You know, they're just a very unique and special place. And so, you know, after they watch the video, they'll be asked to read this little portion here, to reflect on some of the events that have occurred there in the Crazy Mountains. Pliniku's dream is probably the most famous, and it has been repeated and retold many times, and for good reason, because it's a very special dream that the boy had as a 9-year-old. And so after they read that portion and watch the video, they'll come down and here's some questions that they'll be asked to answer. And then Mike Jetty put my picture down here. Thanks, Mike. This photo here was taken at the Montana Historical Society. But you know, they'll get a chance just to reflect on the ceremonial tradition of fasting, why it's such a important part of Apsáalooke world view, why it continues to be an important part of what makes us who we are. And you know, I think it's the kind of knowledge and information that they can then transpose and, you know, help them to learn more about other nations who fast as well. Of course, all of the Northern Plains people value that ceremony. There's the Chief Pliniku's lesson. Did I do this one? Can't remember. Let's see. I guess I'll find out in a quick second. I didn't do this one. This must have been Mike Jetty. Good one though. Of course, Pliniku's is one of those guys, you know, some people never really die because we talk about them like every day and think about them, and you know, we have schools named after them and museums and their images. I grew up with his image in the Crow Agency Public School. I saw him every day from the time I was a first grader. He was right there, his photograph, as you came in the front door. So thinking about it, kind of a little emotional, but he's still around. He still has moments, I guess you could say. We still celebrate his achievement, his dreams. You know, I've done several different artistic productions over the past few years here in Bozeman and around the region that have used Pliniku's as kind of an inspirational artistic cultural figure, because he does kind of transcend time and space in so many ways. And so I encourage you to check out this lesson, even though I didn't write it. I think it's probably still all right. I think it's still probably pretty good. I wanted to show some of these other ones that I did. This was an important one that I felt like really would resonate with people because of the pandemic that we just came through here with COVID-19. And, you know, I really want to take a moment to just say my heart goes out to all of you out there who have lost loved ones to COVID-19 during this past year. I know I lost some very good friends, some people who I loved very close to me. And it was a hard year. And, you know, I'm thankful that, you know, we can say that we're past it now in so many ways on the reservation. But it's something that we shouldn't forget about. It's something that you know, it's going to take a long time to recover from. Um, you know, the people who we lost, the voids that they left behind. Uh, it's a different world now in many of our communities, and I just think that it's important for us to consider that as educators, as teachers, as students, that we have enough trauma, I think, already in Indian country that we're living through and trying to be resilient from. And I think this past year really, you know, tested our resilience. But I think that we're showing that you know, we still have our traditions, we still have our values, and we're gonna come back from this. So this particular lesson here looks at the smallpox pandemic, and you can imagine COVID-19 was bad, but smallpox was cataclysmic, and that you would say in many of the communities where smallpox was introduced here on the Northern Plains, anywhere between 75 to 90% of the communities died from this disease. And I would say, I would suggest to you that any community that loses that amount of population is going to look extremely different. They're going to go through a long period of reorganization because so much of the knowledge and so much of the stability is going to be lost. And I think that this was the case for Native people here in Montana. You just have to look at the numbers and you can start to imagine the devastation that occurred here. And so this particular lesson looks at an incident that occurred on the Billings Rims in a place known as the Sacrifice Cliff. And you can click on this link here for the Billings Gazette. You know, I guess I can do it real quickly. Here's a high resolution image. I'm not sure if this is the actual original Sacrifice Cliff or if it's on the other side of the river, because I think that the city kind of may have gotten confused on where they marked the actual site. But the story is that these men were off hunting on a hunting party, and when they came home, when they returned, their families had died of smallpox, and they were so heartbroken, and they understood as well that now that they had come back and come into contact with their families, that they would likely be infected as well and suffer a horrific death, and potentially pass that virus along. And so rather than do that, they chose to sacrifice themselves. Here's a story in the Billings Gazette from a few years back that kind of tells about the local legend. It's very well known back home in Billings. Again, whoops, that took me to the wrong spot. Told me there's a drought. I knew that. No thanks. Okay, not gonna let me do it. Billings Gazette's kind of greedy. They probably want me to pay them some money. So that might be an issue with you guys there. I think it's like 25 cents. I don't know. It's not very much. You know, if you have to pay the Gazette to read that article, and maybe I'm just not doing it right, but I don't think I want to dink around with it right now. But you should be able to have access to that article. And even if you Googled it, it's up there. But the article just describes the sacrifice that these men made. They blindfolded their horses and they ran them over the cliff, the sandstone cliff down into the river. And, you know, they sacrificed themselves to stop this disease, to really kind of put it into it. And I think it's a real valiant. I think it's an honorable thing that they did. It's you know, for many of us, it would be something that I don't think very many of us could do. And so, but it shows on many levels the commitment, the dedication to family and community. And so, you know, you go down here and then there's some questions that the kids will will be asked. And Mardell Plainfeather, I believe, the Crow historian who lives in Billings, she was quoted in the article. And so there's a question about, what did she say? And it's a great introduction to Mardell. She's a very important, wonderful lady. And so let's see. So those were some of the lessons that I put together. I think I had one more. I think I helped out with the ancient art. And then also we have a buffalo jump lesson that we're looking at. And I don't see it up here anywhere, but the buffalo jump, it's a great spot. I encourage you to take your students to someplace like it, get them out on the land. So anyway, that's enough of that. I think I'm going to go ahead and show some of the presentation that I put together. And I think I'm going to pause real quick as well to see if there are any questions or comments, or let's see where the chat box at.
Yeah, so we did have a question a little bit back from Callie Nicholson. She said, how much is global warming impacting the IPA studies?
A lot, huge. That's the only reason why we're doing it. I mean, we couldn't do the ice patch archaeology if the earth wasn't warming up, because, as the earth warms, these ice patches are melting, and they have a very peculiar way of melting. This ice is so ancient that when it melts, that's not even really the proper term for it. The layer on top that, melts actually just goes straight into the air. There is no residual water that runs out. When you go to the ice patches, when you see water coming out from underneath, that's typically ice from last year or more recent ice. But the ancient stuff, it's really, really old, it apparently does not turn into water. It just like evaporates. And so it's difficult to see it, melting, and to see the traces of it. But if you go back year after year, you see it is, all these ice patches are shrinking precipitously very fast. And as they shrink along the edges, there's all these things that are popping out that we haven't seen for thousands of years. So this past September, I was looking at the ice patch that was 8,000 years old, and right along one of the lower edges, the ice had melted out, and it had revealed a cedar wood forest that was 6,000 years old. And that forest had been covered by ice, for the past 6,000 years. And the reason why those trees grew there at that one time was because of a solar event that occurred, and they were able to go back and to identify exactly why the climate had changed so significantly that those trees grew at that high elevation so many years ago. But then, obviously that period came to an end, and there are no trees. It's, the Sabertoothed Plateau is high above tree line. And so, and like the 10,000-year-old object that melted out of the ice as well. We would have never had found that if global warming, if climate change wasn't happening so quickly. And I, from what the researchers tell me, from the folks who I'm working with here at MSU, it's getting faster every year. And the past 2 years, this is really weird too. The past 2 years that we were up there, it was so steep because there were huge forest fires right at the end of the summer coming from the West Coast and here in Montana. It was so smoky up there on that plateau that the visibility was like, I mean, you couldn't even see. It was a weird Twilight Zone-ish feeling up there walking around and not being able to see very far into the distance because it's all smoky. And again, that's part of the climate change, consequences as well. Great question. Okay, any other questions?
That is the only question we have in the chat for right now. Thank you so much.
You bet. So this is a presentation I put together, talking about resilience as teachers, as educators. We want to be resilient. We want to teach our students to be resilient. The problem is we can't really teach about resilience because kids are too smart for that. So we have to demonstrate resilience. And I think that, talking about it and demonstrating it can also be one and the same thing. But we really have to kind of, I think as educators, bear that responsibility to show that to our young people. And so I thought this was such a beautiful photograph. And it's a Lakota Sioux saying that I put up here. It's Mitaki Oyasin. And it's kind of a prayer. It's a prayer. It's a sacred prayer that is also a phrase. And it's a scientific connotation and it's a ceremonial connotation at the same time. Because we know now through science that all of us are connected. We've known that for a long time, but it's becoming clearer and clearer through all of the other different forms of knowledge that we're progressing with, from the most sophisticated forms of, studying the outer limits of our interstellar space and everything else that has to do with the universe to microbiology and, even such things as the microbiome. We would think that that would be a no-brainer, pardon the pun. But, the idea that, if your gut's not healthy, your brain's not getting healthy either. The idea that, those two things are connected, that was never really taken seriously by doctors until now, today. And we're being told that, well, if your stomach is unhealthy, then it can have a whole series, a cascade effect of all of the different functions of your body, including in your brain, because the bacteria is connected. And so this idea that we're all connected is just being reinforced more and more every day by the science that we do. Native people have always known this as a real obvious thing. Not only are we connected to them physically through so many different realms, I mean, our relatives, the animals, and even the non-animate things, but we're connected to them spiritually, ceremonially. And I think this is an inspirational point of resilience that Native people have leaned on. When you start to see how everything is connected, Mitakiyoyasin, you're talking about our spirits being connected to our bodies, and the understanding of what it means to be a spiritual person. Even just a rudimentary understanding and introduction of those ideas at a level that students can appreciate, even just from an academic perspective, I think is appropriate. And I think it's going to enrich those students' understanding of Native philosophy, Native culture, and that's going to help them in their own lives as they, go through the process in this contemporary world of deconstructing all of the different elements that they're immersed in every day to find out who they really are inside and what does that really mean. And, I think without that knowledge, I'm not sure how much we can really actually know. And so I really strongly encourage, if you even want to make a poster with this or find some type of a illustration that you can hang in your classroom or something, I think it's a good thing. It doesn't show any kind of a bias or anything. I just think that it's just, again, sharing some culture, which is the charge of Indian Ed for All in our Constitution and our codified laws, with everybody. I think it's a good thing. Here's the teepees. I saw that OPI was using this image on their introductory page for their. Yes.
Sorry, you're still sharing the IEFA website. The slideshow isn't popping up.
Wow, my co-pilot, you're supposed to be alerting me to that.
I was letting you run with it. I was letting you run with it.
Oh my God. Okay, everybody, I'm not insane, all right? This is actually what I was trying to show you. Can you see that now?
No, it still hasn't changed. Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh, wow, that's a
Okay.
gorgeous photograph.
Yeah. So all this time when we were having this sacred moment, it was just me looking at my computer screen. Now that's Indian humor. I think, you know, Mike, Jenny, you should get a good laugh out of that. Yeah, isn't that cool? You know, I don't know, I can't make heads or tails of like what kind of cultural reference this comes from, you know, but I like it, you know, and you can see down here these little images of these people, you know, that looks like kind of like rock art. But then around on these other areas, you know, not so much like rock art. Here, this looks like kind of some Greek. I don't know, is this like the guy that's half goat, half, I don't know. And then this thing here, this looks like New Age. This here looks like Buddhism or, you know, some kind of East Indian religious pose. This kind of looks like more of a Garden of Eden. So I don't think that has any kind of a cultural theme in this particular image. But what I liked about it was that, you know, it included all these different diverse things. It's even got aliens in there. See that? I mean, this is not discriminating against not just human life forms, but I mean, earthly life forms, but those from other planets. So I think that's pretty cool. Here's an eyeball. And this here is Northwest Coast though. And see that? Kind of an eagle, Seahawk thing going on there. Okay, I'm going to move on. If I can. Can you see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so this is the photograph that I was referring to. I think OPI has kind of used that image of the teepees on the Billings rims to kind of highlight the year that we just went through. And I think it's very appropriate. You know, I wish we could keep these up all year, to be honest with you. It's just a beautiful symbol of the resilience of Native people, our joy that we still have for life, our passion that we have for art and for each other. And so these teepees were set up on the Billings rims to commemorate, to honor the people who we lost to COVID-19 over this past year. And during the holiday season, over Christmas and New Year's, they had these lights up, and then I don't know how many people got to go visit them, but they changed color. They all like blinked different colors. So it was a dynamic scene. It was a dynamic presentation, and it was one of the most visited spots in Billings of the entire year. You know, I think most every night that they were up, there was traffic there. People wanted to see them. And people came and left rocks, stone rocks, little stones, and they would write their loved one's name on there as a dedication. And they put them around the teepees there. And it's interesting, you know, after they took the teepees down, the rocks were still there, just like throughout Montana, where you go and there's teepee rings in Montana that are thousands of years old. And, you know, I hope that these teepee rings will last for thousands of years. These rings here, people are still taking rocks to them. They're still using them to pray. And so I just thought, wow, is there a better representation of Native culture than stone circles on the ground? You know, and how they continue to hold their power even after the teepees are gone. The memories that they hold and the prayers and the sacred gatherings that were there, you know, they help us be resilient. They, you know, help us to want to continue on. And so we have a very rich ceremonial way of life here in Montana. And, you know, we say that wealth is our connections. And it's so true. And the medicine is everywhere. You know, when we see it, when we can identify it, when we know how to access it, you know, and doing that, you know, with your attitude, with how you respect and embrace the people in your circle, the animals, and all the things, again, that we saw in that first slide. I think that those are all ways that we show resilience and are able to overcome tremendous obstacles. So for those of you who know me and have followed my research and work over the past many years here, several years, you know, I'm only 29, so it hasn't been that long. Just kidding. Actually, I'm getting a little older, but I've been trying to emphasize this concept here for a long time called medicine wheel country, because I really feel like big sky country is a good one and last best place. I like those, but you know, they're not really reflective of, well, in some ways, big sky country is, of the cultural geography here. And it's a place where ceremony is the highest level of understanding. And I think that the reason is because Native people understood that spirituality is the highest level of experiencing this life, of understanding who really are. There has to be a spiritual aspect of you that leads the way. You know, we can think and reason a lot, but there has to be more than that. And our bodies are weak, and you know, they're only here for a little while. So you know, this idea of the spiritual ceremonial way of life that's so strong here in Native culture is reflected, embodied in the medicine wheel. We see these wheels all around this area, up into Canada, over to the Dakotas, down into Wyoming. And that's where we see the sun dance that is still practiced today. We see the values of reciprocity, family, which has really kind of helped Native people, obviously gotten them through over the past couple hundred years of traumatic upheaval and cataclysmic loss, catastrophic cultural disintegration. But yet we still prevail, we still persevere, and show resilience. And again, it's a great opportunity, it's a great theme. I'm so glad that OPI chose that theme this year. How do we stay resilient? Well, you know, we connect with our relatives that are always resilient, you know, and our relatives are out in nature. You know, knowing how animals, you know, the songs that they sing, you know, the plants when they come back, all of our relations, how they can bring us joy and show us how to live a good life, you know, if we pay attention. Though that's part of our resilience. You know, we're connected to nature. I encourage you to get your students outside. Let them learn the different times of the year through what's happening outside. You know, in the fall, when you bring them into your classroom, you know, bring some leaves in there, or focus on the changing colors of the leaves and the shortening days. I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can get the students to help them understand where they live and why that's important, and why they should feel good about that. And so here's a little page that I put up that comes from, I believe I found this on the Little Bighorn College website. And this is the Apsalagat language and the translation of when they knew what time, or how they knew what time of year it was. And all these different things that they paid attention to. And it's like this with everything. You know, if you look at the Apsalagat explanation of the night, they'll tell you, you know, it's not really nighttime until about 2 hours after the sun goes down, you know, because you can still see light in the sky. Finally, after about 2 hours, it gets dark, you know, the dark face. And then like 2 hours before the sun comes back up, it's not night anymore. You know, it's a new time. So I think paying attention to, you know, every little aspect of our day and our year, you know, those are all ways that we are resilient because we're staying on the pace of nature. And it's easy for us as people in this fast-paced world that we get in with our phones and our computers to lose touch with that pace. And I think people are really wanting that right now. So, and especially since the pandemic, you know, we've seen a huge increase in folks wanting to get out onto public lands. There's a great big emphasis on that right now. And, you know, I think it's a good thing. You know, I think that it can only lead to good things as long as we continue to respect those public lands and, you know, don't begin to erode them. And also our private lands. So again, just another way that we are resilient. You know, we pay attention to animals. We see, you know, the bison, they're resilient and they work as a team. They always have a new leader. You know, this leader here, he'll step aside after a while and go to the back and someone else will take over and they'll just keep taking turns being in the lead, breaking the trail. It doesn't have to be the same person all the time. And that's a good value for us as human beings to learn, you know, to step up and to also step back and to know how to do that and when to do that. Those are values that are native values, they're natural values, they're good ways of showing children how to, you know, be responsible members of a circle. Okay, one of the things I wanted to share with you, I don't have much time. I'm just going to go through these. I just threw these in at the last minute, but I'm making this. Well, we just got funded to make a movie, me and this guy out of Missoula, and so it's kind of exciting. And so we got this big grant from the state of Montana. We're going to be doing this. Oh, I can't go into detail. I guess I forgot. He said I'm not supposed to discuss it too much, but it's exciting. I'll tell you that. And part of what makes it cool is that we're looking at this ancient culture that the Anzac boy and the Clovis people here in Montana survived through. And so one of the concepts that I've been saying is that these people were like the toughest people ever, because not only did they have to live through the Ice Age, where it was freezing cold, but they had to deal with all these like super predators that are all extinct now, but they had to face them down on a daily basis. This is one that you never hear of, but I hope just kind of going through and researching here, started to get a fascination with this American lion. It's the largest cat of all time. This is what the Anzac boys family was having to like deal with, cats like this. And that doesn't even include the saber-tooth. Oh, and here's the short-faced bear that's here in Montana at the time. You can see how much bigger the short-faced bear is compared to, this is a grizzly bear here. Like this thing would slap that guy around, you know, and this was a man-eating bear that the Clovis people had to find a way to survive around. Oh yeah, and then they were also hunting these animals here that were 11,000 pounds and had these tusks that they could swing wildly with great power. They could run 35 miles an hour, and this is what they were hunting. I mean, I don't think that I would even come close to that thing, much less try to hunt it. And so, I mean, the life that they lived is just beyond belief. Here's another animal that you may have never heard of that I've just recently became acquainted with. It's called a hell pig, and it was here in America at the same time as the Clovis people. Just the face alone makes you want to, you know, crawl up in a blanket and, you know, put on some Kenny G or something, because, you know, I mean, it's just so disturbing, right? I mean, again, these were some of the creatures that these people had to deal with. Here's a saber-toothed cat, you know, hunting like wolves, packs. Here's a bison Antiquus horn. This is the horn from an ancient bison, like 1.5 times the size, or half times the size again of a regular bison today. And I just thought I would throw that in there because I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So, got about 5 minutes left. I managed to, as they say on Car Talk, blow a perfectly good 55 minutes. Oh, I only got 1 minute left. Okay, well, I guess that means I don't take any questions, huh? I'm really glad to hang out with you guys today. I hope I entertained you, and maybe some of you got my Indian humor just a little bit. Thank you so much, Sage.
Thanks for being here. Thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation, and I think I speak for everybody when I said we learned so much from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Love you guys.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording now.